Quite often the reason why salespeople fail is because they don't know what their target is. And sometimes it can be unimaginably large in their mind, but in reality, we need 100,000 more of sales. For B2B businesses, I always say, look, write down your target market, write it down.
Yep.
Nobody writes it. Very few people write stuff down. There's networking, there's cold calling, there's warm calling, there's exhibitions, there's SEO, there's lots of different ones. The next key number is what is your conversion rate in both number and pounds from lead to customer. The reason why people buy is because they've got a problem. Are we clear on what their problem is? Again, business coaching, 3 problems that business owners have is time, team, money. To speak to people, to network with people, and introduce people to each other.
Yeah.
Because if we know, like, and trust somebody, then guess what? Our clients are probably going to know, like, and trust them as well. So it's all about networking.
So most of the advice on this channel is around Google Ads. But what we found over the many years of working with Google Ads clients is that it's great at getting leads through the door, but can't guarantee sales. And it's where a lot of businesses are wasting money. So today we are welcoming Martin, who is going to share with us some of his insights and guidance on where many businesses are leaking and potentially wasting opportunities when taking customers from a lead to signing up. So we're looking forward to talking to Martin now. Thank you for coming along, Martin.
Good afternoon.
What I guess would be a good kind of start really is to provide the audience with a little bit of background on who you are and why you're the man to listen to on this topic.
Okay, I'm a business coach based in Hertfordshire and work with clients across Hertfordshire, Bucks, London, and other places. I've been doing this for about 10 years. Before that, I worked in the city, worked for a FTSE 100 company in business development, had a couple of businesses of my own, one of which succeeded, one of which failed, and then was sales director of a global company for 4 years. And after all of that experience, decided to become a business coach. And
Perfect.
That's how I got to 10 years ago.
And we have an interesting journey of how we have met. I think we were talking about this before, of how we do some work for some clients and then the other way around, and it ended up in a roundabout way you doing some coaching for my mum's business. So
yeah,
we've worked together in a range of
I think an ex-client of mine was after they stopped working with me, start working with you, because they knew another client of mine. They introduced you to the other client. The other client introduced you to me. I then introduced you to about 4 or 5 of my clients.
Yeah.
I'm working with your mum as well.
So it's complex web.
What does that teach us? That teaches us to speak to people, to network with people, and introduce
100%.
people to each other.
Yeah.
Because if we know, like, and trust somebody, then guess what? Our clients are probably going to know, like, and trust them as well. So it's all about networking and
bringing it all together. I have a separate anecdote. We might probably move this around the podcast. It doesn't need to be right at the start of it. But one of my most recent referrals came from a friend I played baseball with, his wife's boss's brother-in-law. And I was like, yeah, that's about how fun. They're over in New York. So out of absolutely nowhere, you cast the web and you meet new people. So really excited to see what we talk about today. And obviously, you didn't mention your TEDx talk as well. That's I
did a TEDx talk last October. I think a lot of people have got a yearning to do one. I never had that. I just visited a local TEDx the previous year, and I was sitting front row, and they said towards the end that we're going to have a little sort of half an hour slot where people can stand up and speak freely for 1 minute about a topic they might want to talk about next year. And I was sitting next to somebody, and she was going, go and you do it, you do it, you do it. And she's banging me on there and pushing me and stuff like that. And I, because I'm weak, I got up and walked towards the stage without a clue about what I was going to speak about. And then it got closer and closer, and I just thought, empty your mind. Because emptying your mind is a great thing. Try not to think. Yeah. Your mind already knows it. And by the time I got to the microphone, I'd worked out what I was going to say for my 1 minute. And I sort of got the bug from that. And then I applied the following year, and I was fortunate to be selected and did my talk.
Is there somewhere we can find that for anyone?
Yeah, that's on YouTube. If you go onto TEDx Martin Purvis, just search that in Google, then my talk will come up.
Good stuff. Joys of Google. Brilliant. Should we talk some lead generation?
Let's do that.
Okay, so let's talk about inbound leads. And I guess kind of before we get started, why I'm very passionate about this is because I come from a Google Ads background. Ads are getting more and more expensive. They are a huge part of businesses' marketing budget, and they're getting more competitive. And so anytime we can find an opportunity to, I always I hate the phrase hack, but any hack to improve the results of your Google Ads result that's not going to cost you more money. So any way we can improve Google Ads results, but don't have to give more money to Google, for me is something we should be making more noise about, and improving the chance of a lead becoming a customer absolutely is one. So I guess the first question I've got for you, Martin, is when you go into a new business or you're already working with someone from a coaching perspective, how often does it come up that their lead follow-up process just isn't up to scratch?
Virtually every time. Virtually every time. I work with businesses. When I start working with them, they tend to be $1 million to 10 million turnover. That's where they're in the position where they need my help, and we hope to get them to 10 to 20 to 30 million turnover. And almost universally, companies in that area, there are exceptions, but do not have. I would say it's not just they don't have a lead follow-up process. They don't have a sales process. They don't have a marketing or sales process. They throw money at marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They throw money at their website. They give people the role of sales, but they don't, you call it a hack, I call it a process. They don't have a sales and marketing process that is auditable, defendable, and works.
I like that. Defendable is a nice way to look at it.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
I think in that market, there are not many sales professionals. There are plenty of people in big companies who are sales professionals who go on the training courses, have read the books, and have been trained, because large companies need to have it to work. But small companies, I think an awful lot of people, whether it's the business owner who leads sales, whether it's somebody who's come in who leads sales, whether it's somebody who's already there who seems to get on well with customers that leads sales, quite often they haven't had any real sales training, and therefore they don't know how to set it up. They don't know how to organize it. So it's not through lack of wanting to, through lack of ability or anything like that. It's just they don't know what to do.
Okay. And where would be the first place you would start? I presume you go in, you do your review. Where is the first point in the journey that you would start to look at, or where is the area that they fall short in first or the most?
I think you've got to start at the beginning. And where I start is, what are you trying to achieve? Let's put some numbers on it, because quite often the reason why salespeople fail is because they don't know what their target is. And sometimes it can be unimaginably large in their mind, but in reality, we need 100,000 more of sales this year, new sales. That's what it is. So the first thing is what's your target? The second thing is what is your target market? A number of people who say, well, everybody, anybody really.
Yeah.
As soon as you get into that, you've got a problem, because anybody is really difficult to market to and really difficult to sell to. So a real clear description of target market. And for B2B businesses, I will say, look, write down your target market.
Mm-hmm.
Write it down.
Yep.
Nobody writes it. Very few people write stuff down.
Sure.
Write down your target. So my 20-year-old son could be given that, and he could go on the internet and he could come up with 100 companies that fit your target market that you can market to. If you couldn't come up with 100 companies that actually are your target market, then your target market is not written clearly enough.
Yep.
So go back and write it clearly. So the first one is target market.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is lead generation strategies, and this is where you guys come in, because one of the lead generation strategies is Google Ads. But there's lots of others. There's networking, there's cold calling, there's warm calling, there's exhibitions, there's SEO, there's lots of different ones. But what I find is a lot of people don't have them in strategies. So when I say write down what your lead generation strategies are, you should have 4 to 6, 5 to 7 strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And a strategy is written down. It has a description of an activity.
Yeah. So
if it's got no activity, you can't give that to somebody and say, go do that activity. If you just say something like it's networking, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? So a networking strategy would be, we attend 4 networking events per month, where we expect our target market, already defined, to be in sufficient and plentiful supply. At each one, we seek to have 10 business conversations. We seek to have 5 conversations with potential target market, and arrange 2 phone calls or 2 follow-up meetings from the meeting. So at the end of the month, how many, this is where your accountability comes in. How many did we go to? Well, we went to 1. The strategy says 4. Why aren't we going to 4? Let's find them. How many people did we speak to? We went to 4. We should have spoken to 40 people. Do we not know how to speak to people? Do we need to read Andy Bound's book, The Jelly Effect, and understand how to do networking? Not everybody knows how to do it, how to move from one conversation to another so you can get round the room and not stuck with one person. Mm-hmm. How many calls did we get, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's just those basics of just having that written down on one bit of paper. So somebody coming in saying, well, are you doing that? Or are you doing something else? Because that's what we think works.
And actually going back to your first point of preparing on the target market is so important, because going back to Google Ads, we get a lot of people that come to us and say, someone said we should do Google Ads. And Google Ads can be a terrible idea for a lot of businesses if their target market are not the type of people that are searching online. And interestingly, like a great example of that is people will come and say, we want to run Google Ads so that we can appear for this specific industry. We only want to appear for schools. We only want to appear for gyms or offices or FTSE 100 companies. That's one of the real stumbling parts of Google Ads. It has some process in place, but it's actually pretty terrible at targeting industries. So that's where networking absolutely can come into its own as other types of marketing. So lining up the target market with the channel you then prioritize.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing. What you've just explained there is you've explained something really simple in 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges with a lot of small businesses is they think it's very, very complicated. Mm-hmm. And then to find out, well, would Google's ads work for your industry? Oh, that's too complicated. I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So they don't bother do it. They put it on the back burner and they never learn. Whereas, 5 minutes talking to you could work out whether Google ads works for you and what the cost would be. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time because there's fear, because they don't know, they think it's a bigger task, a bigger job, and therefore ignore it. And that's where you get the problem with.
And you start wasting a lot of money.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And then I suppose bringing it back to, and I really, obviously, selfishly come at this from a Google Ads perspective, but really we're talking about any form of inbound lead. So that could be Google Ads. It could be SEO. It could be networking and referrals, or just direct through the website. What kind of benchmarks do you look to have in place when someone inquires? Do you have like a golden rule, or what you'd expect in terms of how quickly people respond, how often they respond?
Yes. Hold on to that question, but let's just share something beforehand. What is a lead?
Okay.
And that's a question we can discuss, but what is a lead? What is the starting point of the sales process?
Interesting. I would look from an inbound lead, my definition, by no means would this be right, but that is someone raising their hand and making them aware to you that they want to buy your goods or services.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll give you my definition. And by the way, I think marketing is to take somebody from unknown.
Yep.
They don't know you, you don't know them, to known, such that it is a two-way conversation with a decision maker in your target market where they have raised a hand to say, I may require something that you could provide. So that's a lead. So the starting point is, how many leads are we targeting per month, and where are we getting them from? And what a lot of people have, they have confusion about what a lead is. And so when you're asking, you'll get a question, we had 60 leads last year. No, you had 60 pings on an email.
Don't tell me clicks. That's the worst one. We had 100 clicks. That means we've got 100 leads. No.
Yeah, and you got the business owner sitting over there. You got the COO sitting here. You got this person in sales and the marketing, and there's all these sorts of numbers, and you waste an hour's session trying to decipher it. No, let's. And to be honest, I don't really care whether we use your definition or my definition. It's broadly the same point. It's the point where it's known, raise hand. Let's count those. That's the starting point. And when you count them, you can identify them. And then we go to your next question.
What is your benchmark for how quickly people then respond to that raising of the hand? Do you have benchmarks?
It depends on the industry, but what I always say is, when do you do it? And they generally don't know because they don't measure it. So it could be some get responded to straight away, some get responded to 48 hours, some a week, and some, interesting. I'm moving some large items of furniture, and so I called 3 removal companies to get a quote. One of them responded by email within 2 hours with a quote, and it was full. And I thought, that's quite interesting. I'm already a bit tied to them because they've told me something. One of them responded about 48 hours later. And to be honest, I'm already with the first guys, because if you're cheap, why are you so cheap? And you sort of, the doubt comes in, and one of them hasn't responded at all. So you've got 3 companies there. One of them has obviously got by the end of the day, thing. One of them's it's got to be 48 hours, but recognize for me, that's not good enough because I'm already getting sold on number one, and one of them hasn't even responded yet. So you paid something, whether it's Google, whether it's your website, SEO, or what, you've paid some money out to create something, and the value is coming back and you're missing it.
100%. And that, I always take this back on our frustrations of, quite often people say Google Ads doesn't work. It's quite a broad question. And that last example you gave me, someone doesn't reply. They may well be someone that then goes back to their agency and says, Google Ads didn't work. We didn't get the value from it. But what is the response kind of time in that? I actually pulled together some stats from some various pieces of research. So the specific number, and I'll include within the YouTube the links to some of these specific articles, but 78% of customers buy from the company that responds first. You've proven that exactly.
There you go.
That point.
There you go.
And also, like any podcast on marketing, relating this back to AI, there are no longer, in my view, any or many excuses as to not responding quickly, at least with something.
Yeah.
So it may be challenging to provide a specific quote by AI, but one of my kind of pain points and a huge missed opportunity I see with a lot of businesses is they have a form on their website that then takes someone through to a thank you page that then goes into the ether, and you don't know when that company is going to get back to you. There's two huge opportunities there within that sales journey that I think a lot of businesses miss out on. Firstly, that thank you page can be really personal and nice, and sometimes even funny. Yeah. I've seen people put GIFs in there to be a little bit personal rather than just thank you for your inquiry. It's a great opportunity, even at that point, to say, here is what happens next. Someone will get back to you within 24 hours. Yeah. Make sure you check your junk, that type of thing. A really popular one as well we've seen on that thank you page with a lot of clients is they're now including the standard thank you page, but they're saying, if your inquiry is urgent, here's our phone number. So you've given them another opportunity to raise their hand again. Or in some instances, and you've got to be a bit careful of these, there's an opportunity for them to book in a Calendly link or a meeting booking, so they can book in a consultation there and then. There's certain systems out there that are available where you'd only show them the Calendly link if they're of a lead of a certain value, for example, so you're not wasting your time. But CRMs and AI systems, going back to what you're saying about processes, have made this part so much easier.
Exactly.
But just been missed out on.
And I think the key thing is, if you just go through what you're doing there in terms of this, I would call them touch points. Mm-hmm. Every time you have a touch point with a potential customer, as long as it's a good touch point, it's an opportunity to add value. And if you're adding value, either adding a tiny bit of value just to feel comfort that you've been listened to, just to sort of see what the path is, just to provide some information on something about something.
Yep.
You're building the relationship. And it goes back to the old thing, whatever happens, people buy from people they like. And the only way you can get to like them is touch points to build the relationship. Mm-hmm. And, if you receive an email request and you don't respond to it and you leave it 48 hours, and then you get an email back at the end of the week, there's no relationship being built.
No, it's the reverse of that.
Yeah. And the challenge is, if you're not delivering value through the sales and marketing process, and if you're not building the relationship, you're going to be competing with your competitors on one thing. Price. And of course, that's where you don't want to go, because everybody there's always somebody who'll beat you to the bottom. So if we've got a sales process that doesn't have touch points with our customers, doesn't deliver value, doesn't respond quickly, then the only way we're going to come in there and win that is on the Friday, we come in at a significantly lower price than everybody else, and that blows that out of the water. Mm-hmm. But that's no good for your business.
But even then, price doesn't always win over convenience. I was looking at that Amazon, for example. Like, Amazon is not cheaper for the most part, but it's so convenient. It's so seamless that you go there for the convenience over the cost. Well, that's to me and my wife's dismay for the amount of random things we have arriving every day. But I think you're spot on there that when it comes to building of the relationship, the moment they raise their hand on their website, even just how your website looks before they've even inquired, like people are starting to build an opinion of you. And once they've made that inquiry, the whole rest of the journey is going to further add to that.
Yeah.
Phone calls an interesting one as well. So what are your general, this is a conversation itself, when it comes to answering the phone, how often do businesses you work with actually have a script and a process in place to say, someone's called in, they want to buy X, whoever answers that phone now knows what they need to do.
As a starting point, generally not. And therefore you're relying on the guile and the ability and the skill of the person answering, which is great if that happens to be the business owner or somebody who's been there 10 years and understands everything. But as soon as you grow and you want to put somebody else in there, they will be lost. Or they will be very experienced, but they'll bring the experience of another company into your company. And that may not be the same experience that you want. So, the idea of a script, I think one of the things about scripts, and maybe we ought to rename scripts, because people are really not scared of scripts. They don't like, I don't want to do a script. I'm not a call center.
I'm not a robot.
Yeah. But the point is, a script is something to make sure you touch on the key points. You can phrase it any way you like. But if you haven't got their email, their phone number, their name, what their position is, what the inquiry is about, how much, when they want it, what their budget is, or whatever it is, you can frame it whatever way you like in whatever form of script, but you need that information.
Yeah.
And it's often easy. When I first started business coaching, one of the things I had a real block on was telling them the price, how much it was going to cost, because I didn't want to scare them away. And we had a script, and I just gritted my teeth one day, and I was on to a prospect, and I literally just read out the script. And it was along the lines of, if you're looking for some sort of group coaching, it'll cost X. If you want a one-to-one, it'll be Y. Which is it do you think you're most suited to? Now, aside, which can you afford? Yeah. And if they said, my goodness, I didn't know it was going to be that much, you can really stop the conversation soon because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
But you told them immediately where you were positioning yourself. And then you change your script thereafter. But it was the script that got me over that really difficult point. Now I've got no problem with it whatsoever. So I think scripts are really, really important in the process, not just for making sure people get the right information across, but so that subsequent people working in the organization follow the system.
I think there's a Hormozy quote along the lines of, if you're not getting enough no's, you're too cheap. And that was incredibly helpful in terms of when we were growing our business. I thought I was, 4 or 5 years ago, setting up this company, I thought I was great at being an agency owner because every customer we ever spoke to said, yeah, you sound great. Let's come on board. And it doesn't kind of work like that. Almost the greatest badge of honor is being able to charge slightly more because you're comfortable in the value, and you'll get the right type of customers that way. I'm sure it's exactly the same in the coaching world or any retainer type model.
Yeah, that's correct.
In terms of the phone answering as well, we've seen more and more clients who, through our phone call recording software, so I think we touched on this when we first spoke. So for all of our clients, we have a software system they can have access to when they come on board. They see all of the lead forms and they get all the phone calling transcripts in there. The goal of that initially was to show the value within Google Ads, but it very quickly became an unbelievable resource to managing directors, sales teams to actually start to listen to some of these phone calls, not to spy on anyone, but just to kind of understand what they're doing. I kind of put that now down as one of my non-negotiables, really, for at least directors. If you're trying to take your sales process seriously, you need to be recording the calls coming in. Yeah. I think that's vital. There's a couple of anecdotes that I found within there that I guess would be interesting to hear your opinion on. The first one is, I think this is my pet peeve. A lead will call in, they'll speak to someone on the phone, and the person at the company will say, well, what would be best, please, if I give you our company email address, can you email in that lead? And anytime I see that, I try not to be a spy to our clients, but I usually kind of nudge that call recording over to the managing director and say, was this logged? Was this tracked? Does anyone know if this person ever actually then sent that email? How would you prefer that conversation was handled?
Well, the first thing is, just in terms of your response being the snitch to the MD, I would just reframe that in your mind, because what we're looking for is a continuing improvement process for which the whole team is involved. So what you've got there is feedback.
Yeah.
Feedback is not what you want, particularly when it's come via you to the managing director, because it means you've done something wrong. Feed forward, because it says, look at this. This is what you did it wrong. And nobody likes that. You're getting a very negative defensive thing. The better way to look at it is what's called feed forward, is you get everyone in the room and say, listen to this phone call. Right. Can we just discuss it? And how can we do it better next time? When you do that, then the person who made the phone call can join in. They're not we're not blaming them or anything. We're not having a go at them. We're just saying, how can we do it better? And of course, it's like anything. If you're a singer or you're playing the guitar or something, when you play it back, you can hear what you're doing wrong, and you can then self-improve. So I think that's the first thing, is to get feed forward, but get everybody in the team. It's not about doing it round the side or with the managing director. How would you want the phone call handled? Well, what does the process say? What does the process say? That it may well be that you want them to email in, but what do you want them to email? Do you want to email them so they can fill in your email so you get the right stuff? What happens when that email comes in? What is the process? How does that get into the system so it gets picked up at the next stage? So I think that what I would do is step back and say, well, what does the process say should happen in these cases? Should you actually be going to a web link and filling in a web link? And if that's the case, I'm just sending you a web link now. Have you got it? Just click on that. Can you see the questions there? Okay, let me take you through the questions. Let's go through them, and boom, you're in your CRM, and it's all working. So the problem, and I think it's sort of what's a little bit behind the question, is we don't want people freelancing on this.
Freelancing is the perfect word, I was saying.
We don't want them sort of making it up as they go along. Yes, they can probably make up a better answer than send me an email, but if it's not part of the process, then it's not going to work.
Interesting. I like that. I think that's such a clear, quick win, and hope, well, not quick win, but something we can kind of take away from this is that if you're paying money for Google Ads and you've got calls coming through, firstly, I would 100% advocate for call recording in some capacity, even if it's just on a trial period to understand what's coming through.
All the time. Because again, sorry to interrupt there, but what should your team meetings be doing on a weekly basis? You should be listening to the best calls and the call of most improvement. So the whole team, whoever's handling them, can listen and say, okay, let's do this, so everyone can learn. And we can always learn and get better. There's always something that comes up. So, gosh, that worked well. When you said that, they responded like that. Should we try that?
It just makes such a difference. And I actually, from a cost perspective, these call recording softwares are pretty minimal in terms of cost. And then I love what you're saying about feed forward, rather than getting people on the back foot, being defensive, but having that opportunity to look at those. Let's say it's 100 calls you received in a month. When you do the numbers down on that, the thousands that would have cost you on Google Ads, the information you can find just from some call recording would be fantastic. And I'll be honest, is if we look at most of the customers we work with, and we've worked with a scale, the ones that get the best results from Google Ads and want to spend more are the ones that have the numbers, and they have the kind of results, and they know things.
Yeah, and this is a key thing, having the numbers. So we talked earlier about what is a lead. Okay, I think how many leads? There's numbers before that.
Yeah.
But the key thing for a sales and marketing team is how many leads. Yeah. The next key number is what is your conversion rate in both number and pounds from lead to customer. And then that, from a sales and marketing team, is the key. The number of leads and conversion rate is the key determinant as to how well it's going. So if you've got a conversion rate of 50%, that's good. You can improve it a little bit, but actually you need more leads. So you need to focus on lead generation. If you've got a conversion rate of 8%, 92% by value of people are walking into your shop and not getting their wallet out and walking out again. Why is that? Is it because you're inviting the wrong people into your shop? Or is it because they're coming in and they're not seeing anything? Nobody's going up to them asking them. They can't see what they want. They don't find it attractive. Your pricing's wrong, whatever. But 92% of people by value is walking out again. Think about that. And guess what? You've paid for those. They didn't pay to come into your shop. You paid them to come into your shop. And they're walking out again. So it gives a real direction to the weekly meetings, monthly meetings focus. What if, we need to get that 8%. If we got that 8% up to 16%, what would that do to our revenue from this?
And the cost to achieve that will be, I can guarantee you, will be so much less than doubling the cost of the marketing to then get to that number. It's kind of all about this topic, and most of what we talk about really is where are the quicker wins that are outside of just spend more money on Google Ads to get better results, but where are the wins to improve that? And that's just
and we can rattle off a whole list of things. So when you're sitting at 8%, what's going wrong? Well, the chances are you're not picking up the leads properly.
Let's go through some of that. I think that's a great point to go through them. So
the chances are some of them are your wrong leads. So it goes back to your target market, goes back to what they're seeing on the website and why they're coming to you. I've got big industrial companies who are getting people calling up for £6 worth of wire or something like that. It's just waste of time. And they may buy for you, which is even a bigger waste of time when you could be dealing with a £6,000 order. So, have we got our lead generation strategies right and our have we got our target marketing right? Next thing, are all the leads being picked up? So are we counting leads and are we accounting for them? So we got 40 leads in 1 month. What happened to them? Did we do something with them or did we not? What is the process? Have we got a sales process? Bear in mind, the sales process is not, look, you've looked at our website. Do you want to buy one? Because the only reason you're going to sell is if it's cheaper than everybody else, and we don't want to be there. For most of our B2B customers, there's a process. There's a process of building the relationship, of building the value in your product over other people's products, and taking them on a journey to a point where they're going to buy from you, whatever. So what does that process look like? Probably don't have one. What are the scripts? We go back. We just talked about scripts, but it's not just the first script, the introduction script, the scripts down the line, because the reason why people buy is because they've got a problem. Are we clear on what their problem is? Again, business coaching, 3 problems that business owners have is time, team, money. So when I'm speaking to a business owner, it's either they haven't got enough time to do things in the business, see their family, team is not working properly for them and effectively for them, or they're not making enough money, or all of them. So when I'm trying to demonstrate value in coaching, that's where I'm going to go. So where is it for your customers? What are the 3 major problems? I know there's probably 30 problems, but what are the three key problems? The reason why they need your product or service. Are we clear on it? Is everybody in your team clear on it? And then what is it that we do that solves that problem? If we don't do this, then all we're doing is just answering the phone dumb and trying to say, look, we've got this one. It's green as well. We've got a blue one. It's not as bad as that in all cases, but have we really spent the time thinking through that, and then taking them on the process whereby you demonstrate the value in solving their problems in a way where at the end of it, they're saying, well, how do I buy from you? Rather than you trying to sell.
I like that as well. The how do I buy from you is an interesting one, because we could talk about lead magnets and that type of thing as a way that people raise their hand. But another kind of way I've seen a lot of kind of businesses fall short potentially is that continued ongoing reminder. A lot of our clients have quite long sales journeys. So leads can get lost in that journey. You might not hear from them for a while. They might go quiet. The sales process might have stalled, but in the back end, there's a kind of marketing and a nurture piece that often is forgotten as well. So I'm not here to kind of advocate for posting on LinkedIn every day, sending them an email newsletter every day, but having a CRM system or a process where at the very least you've got them in there. We work on very smaller scales in terms of our leads. The phone isn't ringing 100 times a month for what we're looking to do, but connecting with people on LinkedIn, if you're posting content on LinkedIn, is such a quick win. And also from a newsletter perspective as well, I don't think we need to be sending newsletters every day, but putting them on some kind of list where they continue to see that trickle through does increase the chances of them eventually becoming a customer further down the line, especially if you've got this long sales process where they could drop out down the way.
Absolutely right. And I think this is one of the challenges where you've got people at the sales front end is they don't have I don't have time to link in with them. I don't have time to send them a newsletter and things like that. And that's where we as businesses need to help them out. What is the timetable for your newsletters? Is there once a month? How's it produced? Who produces it? Let's do it. Create a system, do it. In your CRM, everybody's in your CRM, get them the newsletter. And if they don't want it, they can unsubscribe, and that's fine. How often should you phone them to say, hi, how are things going? Is it every 6 months? Is it every quarter? How often should you remind them about the quote? If you leave it to an individual, the chances are, in my experience, they will tend not to make contact because they will believe that they're bothering them. I think in many circumstances, we just haven't sold and they're bought from someone else. But a lot of times, they've just forgotten. It's just dropped off their list. They were quite interested at the beginning and they're dropped off. They still need that thing, but it's dropped off the list because they've got another emergency. And all they need is that little reminder from you to just say, hey, have you thought about this? And suddenly it goes back up to the top of the list again. So that nurturing process, but that can be that can be done for the sales team.
I think that's a good point as well. That it moves back to marketing almost at that point.
And the system. So, if you've got I don't know what you might have. You might want to have a touch point with somebody who's got a nurturing cycle once every month. So one of them is going to be a quarterly newsletter. One of them might be a personal thing. Hey, Tom, I saw this and thought of you. Mm-hmm. Just you got to put a bit of work into that, but I saw this and I thought of you. And one might be, hi, Tom, was just wondering, we had a discussion about X, Y, and Z. Love to take you through a couple of things about it. Is this still on your agenda or not? So 3 opportunities every quarter for them to remember who you are. LinkedIn's a great one because if they are active on LinkedIn and you're putting a post up just once a week, mm-hmm. they might start to like. And if they like it, they'll get it, and their friends will get it as well. Mm-hmm. But then you become. There's a great quote in a book called The Sales Machine. Okay. Which is a really good book. And it's sort of the nurturing sales journey. And it's Pleon. Never heard of them. Mm-hmm. Pleon. I think I've heard of them. Mm-hmm. Pleon. Yeah, I've heard of them. Pleon. Yeah, they're the guys who do this. Mm-hmm. Pleon. Yeah, Tom. Yeah, I spoke to him the other day. Gotcha. Pleon. Oh, they're a customer. I'm a customer of theirs. We work them really well. Then Pleon. Yeah, I'm a raving fan. So you start off with, and at those first 5 or 6 touch points, they don't contact you. Mm-hmm. You don't know that they're thinking that because they haven't contacted you. Mm-hmm. You may have contacted them, but they didn't respond. But better believe it, it's going on. They're seeing you, and you've probably got better stats than I have on LinkedIn. It's the amount of people who look at your post compared to the ones who like it or comment. There's a huge number of see it, but they just don't.
Lurkers, I think they get labeled.
They call lurkers, but they're just seeing it. But guess what? What they're seeing your brand. They're seeing what you're posting about. They're learning about you. I mean, I sort of go on and off with LinkedIn, but I've been walking around town. My office is in St Albans, and people I'd never met before come up and start talking to me about my son and daughter, who I post quite frequently about, and they're talking to me like they know me. Mm-hmm. I know who they are because they haven't liked or anything, and I haven't followed up with them. Yeah, but they've seen me on LinkedIn, and about a third of my posts are about sort of non-work stuff. And they remember it, mm-hmm. and then they come and see me.
It all goes back to target market, doesn't it? Is your target market on LinkedIn? Mm-hmm. Interestingly, and I suppose kind of opening up a little bit about what we do as a business. As we've grown, I've almost found less of our target market is on LinkedIn. Because when I first started, a lot of our target market were managing directors and founder-led businesses where it would be the managing director who is on LinkedIn because everyone's told to be on LinkedIn. They see about Google Ads and they want to get Google Ads going, and it was great for that. But as we've grown and we actually work a lot more with marketing managers, generally speaking, they're actually not spending as much time on LinkedIn. It's sometimes if you are someone who spends a lot of time on LinkedIn, you forget that a lot of people don't, and lucky them, to be honest. Yeah. But as you grow and your target market changes, where they hang out obviously changes pretty substantially too. That's been part of the journey. But if you don't know who that target market is at the start, then it's a lost cause.
I find I've done this a number of times where you think you know who's in your smaller geographical market, and then you just drive along a street and you see an industrial estate to your left. Never been down there. You turn left in there and there's 40 companies with 10 vans outside and double-decker sort of offices, and you think, I've never heard of them. And you go into all over the country, there are these industrial estates with people that you've never heard of before because they're not on LinkedIn.
That's it, because they're not hanging out where you are.
Yeah.
Where to be.
Yeah, they're not in the chamber and they're not in the networking stuff, but they're there.
They're there. Brilliant. So with all the clients you've worked with over the years, what does good actually look like when it comes to the systems and processes we've discussed?
The first thing is it written down? Because the movement that you're making from a small business mentality to a large business, which I think both of us are trying to help our clients do, small business tends to be in the heads of various people. And because they work in close proximity to each other, information transfers by osmosis. Yep. As soon as you get bigger, it can't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So is it written down? And the best way to know whether it's written down is, can you send it to me? Have you got it written down? Yeah, we've got it written down. Yeah, can you send it to me? Well, when I say it's written down, obviously it's in my head. Yeah. That is a script that I've had hundreds of times. First thing is it written down? Second thing is there a number attached to it? What are we trying to achieve in terms of a number? Third thing is the process written down? Have we clearly explained what we're supposed to be doing? Next thing, who is responsible for that process and number? Everyone. We're all responsible for sales in here. That means nobody's responsible for sales, and that's why you're missing your sales targets, because everybody's finding something else to do other than do the activity and hit the number. So those are the things. Is it written down? Is the activity clear? What is the number we're trying to achieve? And who's responsible for it? And then is there an accountability meeting every week? Could be every day if it's in high level sales, high volume sales. Every week are we saying how many leads did we expect to get? 30. How many do we get? 20. Okay, what's going on there? What can we change next week so we get closer to 30? And keep going back again. It's not blame, it's what can we do next week? So is that process working? And I think that's the one thing. If you just start with that process, you suddenly get into a real positive, virtuous circle of saying, how can we improve the number? Whether it's increasing the number of leads or increase the conversion rate, how can we improve the conversion rate? Well, at the moment, we're dropping them here, there, and everywhere. Well, let's just stop dropping them over there first. Let's do that this week and see what happens. Next week, let's and just move on and on. That's the key thing.
Is actually just tracking it. And I think that goes to all walks of life. One of the most common, I've seen this trend a few ways, but one of the most common ways to spend less money is to track your bank balance every day, for example. Or if you're looking to lose weight, a great way to start is just tracking your weight every day. Because when things go well, you get positive recognition from that. And likewise, you can learn the other way. I think the same goes in business as well. If you're seeing where people are really dropping off, you're analyzing it, you're investing that time, then you're more likely to invest in improving it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the there's the thing called the Hawthorne Effect,
which
is an experiment that was done if you can imagine a 1950s factory in Milwaukee or somewhere like that, where you've got a whole rows of people spinning bobbins and making gidgets and gablets and whatever, and they're going in the raw materials here. So they were there's two identical factories, and they were trying to work out whether the light, the brightness of the lights would make a difference to productivity. So they said to both factories, we're going to change the brightness of the light to see that if it changes productivity. And so one of them, they turned the brightness up, and one of them, they turned it down. So which one do you think, the one who turned the brightness up, do you think the productivity went up or down?
Up would be my guess.
The one where they turned the brightness down, did it go up or down?
Down would be my guess.
Yeah, it went up. Okay, both went up, and it went up because people were being scrutinized.
I see.
So people just worked while they're watching us. So now this is where when you put your numbers, your sales numbers. I had a client who wanted to increase their turnover by 20%. So I said, okay, well, take your monthly turnover, divide it by the number of days in the in the month, stick the run rate up, and then every day put what the turnover was. It was a daily business, and then a plus or minus, are you ahead or behind, so everybody could see. They increased turnover by 20%, 3 years running, every single month except for 3.
Just by looking at it.
The interesting thing is they never went to 30% or 40%. It was just bang on 20%. So it was clear that people were just trying to hit the target, and they got themselves chivied along a little bit on the 3rd and 4th week if they were a bit behind, and I guess they were probably relaxed a little bit if they were ahead on the 4th week. But that was an amazing experiment. That was the Hawthorne experiment live. Is people are being watched, and we can see it on the board. How does that improve things?
And going back to the kind of core message of this really is that if you went through all of the leads you got from Google Ads last month, or any inbound, and you looked at how many of these were contacted within 5 minutes, if that's we'll go on the benchmark that is the benchmark that was set, that's the goal. How many of these were contacted in 5 minutes? And if not, why not? And how many of them were then subsequently followed up 5 times? Again, that's all the data out there says 5 to 6 times is generally the sweet spot to get people over the line. Just by tracking those and using that as a kind of shared goal, it will improve results. And that was kind of purpose behind this conversation to an extent, is that often I think a lot of marketing or sales departments actually forget about how important that is in terms of the results of their ads. So bumping it up the priority list, focusing on that, and having some standard benchmarks in place can make a huge difference. It's not about kind of reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, and it's about, you mentioned the word focus. We're all very busy. but we can all get very busy on stuff that's not important. What is really important in terms of sales or an account management or a sales administration role is, for example, the speed of follow-up and the number of times of follow-up. But we can also find lots of other things that we can be doing instead.
Yeah.
And we do that, but it doesn't have as much, doesn't move the needle as much as following the system and doing the follow-up.
And that goes back to my other point then, is what are the blockers as to why this isn't done? If we already just answered that, is it people don't like doing it? Is it they don't even realize it needs unblocking in the first place?
I think it comes back to a number of things. They're too busy. Don't you realize, Martin, don't you realize how busy we are? And you're asking me, to write down a process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with Claude AI now, you can write down a process in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to go into all of that.
I think we should actually. It wasn't on the plan, but I think it's an interesting one.
That's not an excuse. You just need to find 10 minutes. You saying that you can't find 10 minutes or 1 hour in the week, 2 hours in the week to spend time on writing this stuff down, given the impact that it will have. So the number one is the excuse. Number two is, I don't think a lot of people understand how it works. It's basic stuff, but if you don't know, you don't know. And I'm always amazed about the how few people who claim to be focused on sales have never read a sales book. Great question to ask you. If you're out there and you're looking to hire a salesperson, what was the last sales book you read?
What's your favorite one?
What's your favorite sales book? Yeah. And there's a load of them out there. I mentioned one before, The Sales Machine, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. Anything by Andy Bounds.
Okay.
But there's a load of them. They all say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter which one you choose. There's all the classic ones from the past. There's and we can put up a load of sales books as examples on the thingamajig if you wanted to, because they've all slipped my mind.
That's fine. We'll go back through those and put those in the put those in the description on the.
But the thing is, hi. I mentioned on the podcast recording a number of books, and I didn't have them to hand. So just done this little piece just to give you some of my favorite books in relation to sales and marketing. Let's start with the marketing first. Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley. That is a fantastic book. If you're interested in marketing, read it. Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. Again, read it. And Marcus Sheridan, They Ask, You Answer. Those are three fantastic marketing books if you want to get your head around marketing. As far as sales are concerned, if you're not a sales professional, then Exactly How to Sell. This is a great, simple book for those of us who aren't sales professionals, which an awful lot of people in SME businesses aren't. But that's the book for you. If you want to create a sales function, you want a system, which you should be doing, even if you're the only person doing it, then The Ultimate Sales Machine is a fabulous book. I read this 10 years ago, and I read it regularly and refer back to it. That's a great book. The Perfect Close is How to Close Sales. It's a whole book about how to close sales, and it's based on two very simple questions. You don't need to read the whole book. In the first couple of pages, he tells you where the page is to go and get the two questions, but it's worth reading the whole book. And finally, this is the Bible, as far as I'm concerned. It's Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. It's quite American. A lot of these books are quite American, and some of them don't apply to all situations that you'll find yourself in. So don't worry, just let that wash over you and move on to the next chapter if you find it's not speaking to you or not resonating with you. Other books which I think are worthwhile having a look at: The Sales Bible by Jeffrey Gitomer. That's a very different style, so some people might prefer that. The Challenger Sale. This is an interestingly slightly different approach to sales, but equally it's very well worthwhile reading. And then you've got the Older Questions books, Questions That Sell. The selling is about asking questions. It's not about telling. Questions That Sell. This is a very old book. Alan Pease, Questions Are the Answers. That's just a little tiny one. You can read that in your lunchtime. And then finally, this is one of the classic books by Neil Rackham, which is Spin Selling. So what would I recommend? I recommend you grab Exactly How to Sell first, and then probably Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. Those two, get a hold of them first. Once you get into reading this book, you'll want to read more, and I've given you a whole list of ones that you might want to read them. So just buy the first book and start reading. If you want to get better at sales, you need to learn. There's nobody out there, even the top salespeople who are earning £1 million in commission, they still read these books. They listen to the podcasts. They learn. So if you're not learning, then you're not growing, and your sales aren't going to improve. Hope that's helpful. And numerous times I've had seasoned salespeople. I remember handing a sales book to a guy who'd been a 10-year sales guy, missing his target. Says, "Have a look at that. You might learn something that might be quite interesting. There's some stuff in there. Let me know what you think." 2 weeks later, he handed it back, and you could see the spine had been unbroken.
Yeah,
he hadn't even opened it. He said, "I've been a salesman for 10 years. I don't need to."
There's an attitude there.
And well, you're missing your sales target, and guess what? 3 weeks later, he was out. So I think one of the things is it's all out there. It all says the same thing. Go learn it.
Knowledge is not a scarce resource at this point. It's the attitude and I think it's two different things, because I think it's a very fair point when you talk about sales people who their primary role is to work in sales, because they should be entirely focused on that as their craft. But then you've also got managing directors or founders that can't devote all of their time to that. We're saying that they need to prioritize it more. Every business needs some element of sales, and often it's outside people's comfort zone. But actually, there's smaller kind of quick wins that can be had by just bumping it up your priority list, reading a book.
One book a month. If you've got a 15-minute commute in the car or on the tube or wherever, just stick an Audible on. And what I've found with Audible is you don't have to concentrate like at school and write notes. You can if you want, but you don't. You just have to be listening, because your brain will pick up what it needs.
Yeah.
And I've done this. When I started coaching, I was giving big presentations to an audience of 30 or 40 people, and as you can see, I speak very much from the hip. I just start talking.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd been listening to a book, and a few hours later, I was standing on stage and talking, and then suddenly I started saying some stuff, and I don't even know where I got it from.
Sure.
But I was saying it with huge confidence. What I realized is in the morning on the way to the event, it was said in the book, but my brain picked it up.
Yeah.
It just stuck it in there. So we don't have to be taking notes. Just have it washing through you, and your brain will pick up what you need. And you listen to a book a week, and it can be on sales, it can be on management, it can be on time, it can be on loads of different things. Just have the pattern of having it in the background, and you pick up a load of stuff. But just going back to your question. So what's the excuse? Don't have enough time.
Yep.
They don't make the time.
Time is prioritized elsewhere.
Time is prioritized elsewhere. You're not prioritizing. This is important. Is this important or not? If it's not important, don't do it. Just have low sales. Who cares? But if it's important, we'll prioritize it. Don't know how to do it. Well, learn how to do it. It's really, really easy. It really is easy. Read a book or get AI to summarize it for you. Go on the AI thing if you want. See the segue I've just put.
Yeah, I'll definitely have.
But also have somebody responsible for it.
And a process behind it. And I think that does relate nicely into the AI conversation, which wasn't the primary goal of here, but pretty much everything we've spoken about today really has been being made easier by AI, even straight from the process side of things. So we're chatting separately about some work we're doing with Claude Cowork and Notion, where we have SOPs, standard operating procedures, how we do everything. We don't have that many warm leads. We run things slightly differently. We're not a massive multinational with hundreds of calls. But if a lead comes in, we have our SOPs that we run. They are written down. But where Claude Cowork has been so helpful, and I would recommend this for anyone that has SOPs already, is you can feed those into Claude Cowork so it's aware of what those SOPs are. And then I call them guided SOPs. So we have a backwards and forwards with Claude where it says, oh, this new lead came in. It can scan your Gmail to find out about that lead. And then it can tell you what you need to do at each step of that SOP to help moving forward. The systems are there. If you didn't have an SOP, you can ask Claude to write you one. You can basically interview you and write that process for you there and then. It writes the process. Then moving forward, you've got something to go backwards and forwards on. And then what we've also done is I use this more on the content that we write when we're talking about the knowledge that's available to us all. Some AIs can remember text from a book, but also I do it in the old school textbook way. That's always how I always revised. I read a chapter on a book, I write down the notes that really resonated with me, I feed that into my Notion. And then when it comes to the sales, for example, when we're having those conversations with Claude and the SOPs, I'm telling it to act in a way as if it is Alex Hormozy advising me on the sales.
Yeah.
And it's almost, not only we've gone from an SOP that was basic to a guided SOP that will have a backwards and forwards with us, to an SOP and also some kind of coach in the background that's at least guiding us through that process with pointers. And you take that to the final stage, you can then take those prompts with Claude or most AIs and ask it to build out the follow-up flows within certain CRMs. So form comes in, then they get this email, then it goes to this content, so on and so forth. It all can now be done. That the cost of the systems has been reduced quite significantly there. When I was first working for our family business, we wanted the sequencing within HubSpot, for example, which does this. And I think it was something like £250 a seat per month to achieve that. It's pretty much free now, which is unbelievable in terms of the ability of the systems. So I quite like this kind of juxtaposition. We've talked about all the blockers, and then we've basically said AI can fix them all, which is a bit of a catch-all, but it's true.
Well, if you look at my TEDx talk, I'm talking about a situation in 2003, 2004 when we didn't have Google was in its infancy. I don't think